On our 10th anniversary, flowers arrived at my job signed from my husband, except he swore he didn't send them, and uncovering who did changed our marriage forever. My name is Ruth Brown. I'm 35, married for a decade, no kids, 2 spoiled cats, and a townhouse in Scarborough, Maine. My husband Nathan is 38 and works as a regional operations supervisor for a logistics company based out of Portland. We met in college, dated forever, got married in our mid-20s, and then life sort of settled around us. About a year before everything happened, Nathan started mentioning a coworker named Brooke Hensley. At first it was standard office talk. Brooke caught a compliance issue before it blew up. Brooke stayed late to fix the audit file. Brooke's basically the only one who reads instructions. She sounded competent, maybe a little intense. I pictured someone serious, efficient, not especially warm. The kind of person you respect more than you like. One night while we were doing dishes, I joked, "Wow, sounds like you've got a work wife." He snorted. "Trust me, you would not enjoy Brooke. Not defensive. Not secretive. Just matter of fact." I didn't think anything of it. Nathan had missed anniversaries before because of work. Not intentionally, just poor timing and bad planning. So when he told me he'd be in Dallas the week of our 10th anniversary for a multi-site audit, I was disappointed but not surprised. We said we'd celebrate the weekend after he got back. The morning of our anniversary, I was at the library early setting up for a children's reading program when Kim Alvarez from the front desk came around the corner with wide eyes. "Ruth, you have a delivery. And it's a lot." Behind her was a delivery guy pushing one of those wheeled carts normally used for office equipment. On it sat an enormous arrangement of white roses in a glass vase so big it looked like it belonged in a hotel lobby. Every head in the lobby turned. "Oh my God," Kim whispered. "What did you do to deserve that?" My face was already hot. I don't like attention, especially not public romantic gestures. But at the same time, my heart was doing that ridiculous floaty thing. The delivery guy handed me a card envelope. Inside was thick cream paper with elegant handwriting. 10 years with you still doesn't feel like enough. N. Nathan. My throat tightened instantly. Of course he'd remember. Of course he'd do something sweet while he was away. Maybe he'd finally figured out romance after all. I carried the arrangement back to my office like it was fragile treasure. My hands were shaking a little. I actually had to blink hard a few times because my eyes kept filling up. I texted him a photo. "You are ridiculous. I love you." He replied almost immediately. "Love you too." What did I do? I stared at the screen, smiling. Typical Nathan humor. Playing dumb. "The flowers, you dork." There was a pause. Then, "What flowers?" I called him, still half laughing. "Okay, you can stop pretending." "I'm not pretending," he said, sounding distracted. "I'm in between meetings." "What flowers?" "The gigantic anniversary ones." At my office. Silence. Not playful silence. Processing silence. "Ruth, I didn't send flowers." Something cold slid into my stomach. "Did you order them earlier and forget?" "No. I didn't order anything. I was literally on a plane most of yesterday." His tone wasn't teasing. It was confused, slightly annoyed, like he thought I was accusing him of something. "Well, they're here," I said quietly. "Maybe your mom sent them?" My mom signs her name in giant loopy cursive. "This just says N." Another pause. "I have to go into a meeting," he said finally. "We'll figure it out later, okay?" He hung up before I could say anything else. I sat there staring at the flowers, the scent suddenly overwhelming instead of comforting. My office felt smaller, too warm. The romantic glow had drained away, replaced by something unsettled and prickly. Still, I told myself there had to be a normal explanation. Maybe he ordered them weeks ago and forgot. Maybe a friend was messing with us. Maybe the florist made a mistake. People don't just send anonymous anniversary flowers pretending to be your spouse, right? For the rest of the day, coworkers kept stopping by to admire them. "Nathan is setting the bar way too high. You better keep that man. 10 years and still this romantic?" Wow. I smiled and laughed and said all the expected things, but inside I felt like I was standing on a floor that had tilted slightly and wouldn't level out again. That evening, when I got home, the house felt unusually quiet. The cats wound around my legs, demanding dinner, completely unaware that anything was off. I fed them, changed into sweatpants, and tried not to stare at my phone waiting for Nathan to call. When he finally did, it wasn't warm or excited. It was tense. "I checked my bank statements," he said immediately. "No florist charges." "Okay." I asked my assistant to check if anything was ordered through the company account. Nothing. "So, someone just sent me $1,000 worth of roses for fun?" "I don't know." His frustration was obvious now. Not at me exactly, but at the situation. Nathan hates not having answers. "Did you recognize the delivery company?" he asked. "No. Just a local florist." Another long pause. "Well, whoever it was, it's weird," he said finally. "But it's not dangerous. Probably just a mix-up." He said it like he was closing a file in his brain. We talked about his meetings, my day, normal things. By the end of the call, the tension had faded a little. I convinced myself he was right. Weird, but harmless. 2 days later, I came home from work and saw another delivery box on the porch. Not a giant arrangement this time. Just a neat bundle of tulips, soft pink, my favorite, wrapped in brown paper like something from a boutique shop. No vase. No company branding. My stomach dropped before I even picked them up. Inside was a small card. Hope you smiled today. No signature. No initials. Nothing. Nathan was still in Dallas. I had spoken to him that morning. He had definitely not sent flowers 2 separate times without mentioning it. I stood in the doorway for a long time, keys still in my hand, staring at the card like it might rearrange itself into something that made sense. This didn't feel like a mistake anymore. It felt personal. And that was the moment the romantic mystery officially turned into something else, something invasive, like someone had quietly stepped into my life without permission and was now rearranging things just enough that I couldn't pretend not to notice. I set the tulips on the kitchen counter and walked straight to the window overlooking the driveway, scanning for a parked car, a person lingering, anything unusual. Nothing. Just the normal quiet suburban street, a dog barking somewhere in the distance, the faint hum of traffic from the main road. The house felt too open, too exposed. For the first time since the roses arrived, a thought pushed through all the rational explanations. Someone knows me. And I had no idea who. I didn't sleep much that night. Every small noise sounded bigger than it should have, the refrigerator cycling on, pipes ticking, one of the cats jumping off the couch. I kept thinking I heard footsteps outside, tires slowing on the street, a door closing somewhere nearby. Around 3 a.m. I gave up, got out of bed, and checked the front door lock for the 3rd time. It was still locked. Of course it was. The tulips sat on the kitchen counter like they belonged there, perfectly harmless. In daylight they might have looked sweet. At 3 a.m., under the dim stove light, they felt like evidence. By morning I was exhausted and embarrassed. Embarrassed that flowers had scared me, embarrassed that I didn't have a reasonable explanation, embarrassed that I was already imagining worst-case scenarios. I called the flower shop number printed on the wrapping. A man answered, cheerful in that customer service way. Scarborough Blooms, this is Paul. Hi, I said, trying to sound normal. I received a delivery yesterday, pink tulips, and I just wanted to confirm who ordered them. There was a pause while he typed. Do you have an order number? No, sorry. It was delivered to a townhouse on Seabreeze Lane. More typing. Okay, I see it. Prepaid order placed online. Do you have the sender's name? I'm afraid not. It was paid with a prepaid card. My stomach sank. Do you at least have an email address? Generic one. Nothing identifiable. So, literally anyone could have sent it. I guess technically yes, he said gently, clearly picking up on my tone. Is there a problem with the order? No, I said quickly. They're beautiful. Thank you. I hung up and stared at my phone. That was it. No trail to follow, no mistake to correct. Whoever sent them wanted to stay anonymous and had gone out of their way to make sure they did. I texted Nathan. Second set of flowers arrived. No name. Prepaid. He called immediately this time. Another one? Yes. Are you sure it's not someone from the library? One of your programs. Do my literacy volunteers usually send romantic flowers with mysterious notes? He exhaled hard. Okay, yeah. That's weird. For a moment he actually sounded concerned, which made my chest tighten with relief. I called the florist, I said. No information. Silence. Then, oddly sharp, Ruth, you didn't sign up for anything online, right? Some kind of promotion or contest? No. You didn't accidentally put our address somewhere public? No. The questions kept coming, each one edged with irritation, like the situation was somehow my fault for existing in a way that allowed it to happen. Are you sure you didn't order them yourself and forget? He said finally. That one landed like a slap. I didn't order flowers for myself and then pretend someone else did. I'm not saying you're pretending. I'm saying maybe you clicked something without realizing. Nathan. He stopped. I am not confused. I did not send myself anniversary roses and follow-up tulips. Another pause. When he spoke again, his voice was flatter. Okay. I just don't know what else it could be. Neither did I. We ended the call awkwardly. No love you, no reassuring words. Just the problem hanging there between us like humidity. That night I finally checked our door camera footage. I hadn't wanted to before, part of me hoped not knowing would make it less real. The video showed exactly what you'd expect. A delivery van pulling up. A guy getting out, carrying the bouquet to the porch, setting it down, taking a photo, leaving. No one watching from across the street, no car idling nearby, no dramatic reveal. Just normal. Which somehow made it worse. 2 days later, something else happened that should have felt harmless, but didn't. I got a notification on Instagram. Brooke Hensley wants to follow you. I recognized the name immediately. Nathan's coworker. We'd met once at a company holiday party the previous winter. She had shaken my hand firmly, held eye contact a beat too long, and said, I've heard so much about you. At the time I'd assumed it was polite small talk. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. It wasn't strange for spouses to connect on social media, especially after meeting. Still, the timing felt off. I accepted. Within minutes, a message popped up. Hi Ruth. Hope this isn't weird. I just realized we never connected after the holiday party. I like putting faces to the stories I hear at work, smiley face. Stories I hear. I typed back carefully. Not weird at all. Nice to hear from you. 3 dots appeared immediately, like she'd been waiting. Your library events always sound amazing. Nathan talks about them a lot. I frowned. Nathan had mentioned my job to coworkers, sure, but a lot? He barely asked me about it some weeks. That's nice of him, I wrote. What made you think to reach out? Just curious about the real people behind the office legends, winky face. There was that phrase again, real people. It felt oddly theatrical, like she was observing a story rather than participating in real life. Over the next few days, she messaged occasionally. Nothing overtly inappropriate. Memes about coffee. Comments about Maine weather. Questions about our cats after seeing a photo I'd posted months earlier. But she asked a lot of questions. How long had we lived in Scarborough? Did Nathan like working remotely sometimes? Were we planning to travel this year? Normal topics individually. Together, it felt like filling out a survey I hadn't agreed to take. Then one evening she wrote, I hope your anniversary was special. Nathan wanted it to be perfect. My pulse jumped. Oh, it was quiet. He had to travel, I replied. He felt bad about that. He was planning something though, smiley face. Planning something. I stared at the screen, the memory of the anonymous flowers burning behind my eyes. Do you mean the roses? I typed. A moment later. Yes. I helped him choose them. He wanted something elegant. He adores you, you know. My stomach twisted so sharply I actually put my hand against it. Nathan had sworn he didn't send them. I forced myself to respond casually. They were beautiful. Thank you for helping him. Heart emoji. Smiling emoji. Anytime. He deserves to look like a romantic hero once in a while, lol. I set my phone down very slowly, like sudden movement might make something break. If she helped him choose the flowers, then he had lied. Not about forgetting. About the entire thing. But why lie? Sending flowers isn't suspicious. It's sweet. There was no reason to deny it unless he didn't want me knowing she was involved. That thought lodged in my brain like a splinter. Over the next week, Nathan grew more distant. Not dramatically, just subtly. More time on his phone. Taking calls outside. Shorter answers to simple questions. When I mentioned Brooke reaching out, he shrugged it off. She's friendly. Over-friendly, honestly. She said she helped you pick the anniversary flowers. He looked genuinely confused. What flowers? The roses. She said you asked her to help. His forehead creased. I never asked Brooke to help with anything like that. So she's lying? I don't know why she'd say that. Neither did I. But now the unease had doubled because either my husband was lying or his coworker was inventing things about him, and both options were bad. A few days later, Brooke messaged again. Is Nathan back from Dallas yet? The question was so specific it made my skin prickle. Yes, I wrote cautiously. Good. He was exhausted. He pushes himself too hard. I hadn't said anything about his condition. She knew details I hadn't shared. How do you know he was exhausted? I asked. Oh, just from work. He doesn't sleep much on those trips. Maybe that was true. Maybe she saw him in meetings, noticed dark circles. But the tone felt intimate. Like she knew his habits personally. Around that time, Nathan started snapping at me over small things. Nothing explosive, just irritability. The trash not taken out soon enough. The cat knocking over a glass. Me asking what time he'd be home. Work is insane right now, he said one night, rubbing his temples. Brooke's basically the only reason everything hasn't fallen apart. There was a sharpness in my chest I couldn't name. I waited until he looked at me. Are you two close? What does that mean? I don't know. Close. He stared at me for a long second, then laughed once, humorless. Ruth, she's a coworker. That's it. Okay. Why would you even ask that? I hesitated, then said the truth. Because of the flowers. Because she keeps messaging me. Because she knows things I didn't tell her. His expression hardened immediately. So now I'm cheating? I didn't say that. You're implying it. I'm trying to understand what's happening. He stood up abruptly, chair scraping the floor. Nothing is happening. Jesus, we've been married 10 years. You really think I'd risk all that for some woman at work? The anger didn't feel guilty. It felt offended, almost hurt. I don't know what to think, I said quietly. Well, stop thinking the worst, he snapped, and walked out of the kitchen. I sat there long after he left, staring at the empty doorway, feeling like something invisible had shifted in the room. 3 days later, the next package arrived. A small box. No return address. Left neatly against the front door like it belonged there. My hands were already shaking when I picked it up. Inside, nestled in black velvet, was a delicate gold bracelet. Thin, simple, exactly my style, the kind of piece you wear every day without thinking about it. There was a tiny card. For when you need a reminder. No name. No initials. No explanation. I sank down onto the edge of the couch, the bracelet lying in my palm, cold and impossibly heavy for something so small. This wasn't generic anymore. This wasn't flowers you could send anyone. This was personal. And whoever sent it knew exactly what I would like. For the first time, a new thought pushed through the fear. This person isn't just watching from a distance. They know me. I didn't even wait for Nathan to get home. I called him while still sitting on the couch, the bracelet clutched so tightly in my hand it left an imprint on my palm. Something else came, I said as soon as he answered. A pause. Flowers again? No. A package. Another pause, longer this time. What kind of package? A bracelet. Silence. Nathan. I'm here, he said, voice suddenly tight. What do you mean, a bracelet? I described it, gold, delicate, obviously chosen with care. I read the note out loud. For when you need a reminder. He swore immediately that he didn't send it. Not defensive, not irritated this time. Alarmed. I didn't buy any jewelry, he said. Check the box. Is there a receipt? No. Brand name? Nothing. Ruth, that's not normal. No kidding. Should I call the police? I asked, half joking, half not. I don't know, he said, sounding shaken. Maybe we start with the company that delivered it. Was it UPS? FedEx? No markings. It was just sitting on the porch. So someone walked up and left it there. The way he said it made the hair on my arm stand up. When he got home an hour later, he went straight to the door camera footage before even taking off his jacket. We stood shoulder to shoulder watching the video on my phone. A woman approached the porch carrying a small bag. Not a delivery uniform. Just regular clothes, jeans, dark jacket, hair pulled back. She set the package down, glanced at the door like she was checking whether anyone was inside, then walked away. She never looked directly at the camera. But I knew that profile. Oh my God, I whispered. Nathan went rigid beside me. Is that? Yes. Brooke. It wasn't perfectly clear, the angle, the distance, the shadow from the porch light, but there was no mistaking the posture, the way she moved, the familiar shape of her face. Nathan swore under his breath. She came to our house? She came to our house, I echoed, my voice thin. The realization hit all at once. The flowers. The messages. The questions about whether Nathan was home. The intimate comments about his sleep, his stress. She hadn't just been watching from afar. She had been physically here. Nathan ran a hand over his face. Okay. We're dealing with this. How? I'm calling HR first thing tomorrow. Tomorrow? I snapped. She just showed up at our house. What do you want me to do right now, Ruth? Drive to her apartment and confront her. No, but I stopped because I didn't actually know what I wanted. I just wanted it to stop. That night we barely spoke. Not out of anger, more like shock had drained all the words out of us. We double-checked the locks, closed all the curtains, turned on the porch light. Nathan even moved a chair under the front doorknob, something we'd never done before. I slept with the bedroom light on. At some point in the early morning hours, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Brooke. I hope you liked the bracelet. He picked it out himself, but got shy about giving it to you. My heart slammed so hard it hurt. Nathan was awake instantly when I gasped. What? I handed him the phone. He read it once, then again, his face draining of color in real time. I did not pick that out, he said hoarsely. I swear to you, Ruth, I didn't. I know, I said automatically, and to my own surprise, I meant it. Seeing his reaction, the genuine fear and confusion, something inside me shifted. This didn't feel like a cover story. It felt like he was just as blindsided as I was. He grabbed his own phone and typed furiously. What are you doing? Stop contacting my wife. The 3 dots appeared almost immediately. She replied. I'm helping. You said she needed reminders that you still care. Nathan stared at the screen like it might explode. I never said that, he muttered. Another message popped up. You don't have to pretend anymore. She doesn't appreciate you the way she should. A cold, crawling sensation spread through my chest. Nathan didn't respond. He just blocked her number right then and there. Then he blocked her on every social platform he could think of, hands moving fast, jaw clenched. We're done playing nice, he said. The next morning, he went into the office in person for the first time in weeks instead of working remotely. I spent the day at the library barely functioning, jumping every time the door opened. Around noon, Kim leaned into my office. You okay? You look pale. Just didn't sleep, I said. That was technically true. Nathan called mid-afternoon. His voice sounded exhausted, like he'd aged 10 years in a few hours. I talked to HR, he said. And security. They're taking it seriously. What does that mean? It means this isn't just a workplace issue anymore. He explained in fragments. Brooke had apparently accessed internal files she had no business looking at, emergency contact forms, employee directories, even archived paperwork that included home addresses. She'd used company systems to pull personal details about multiple employees, not just Nathan. Worse, the finance department discovered suspicious expense reports tied to prepaid cards. She was basically laundering company money, he said quietly, using it to buy things off the books. Like flowers, jewelry, anonymous gifts. My stomach churned. They asked if you'd be willing to provide the camera footage, he added. Of course. They're also advising we document everything in case we need a restraining order. Hearing those words out loud made my hands start shaking again. Is she there right now? I asked. No. They put her on administrative leave this morning. Relief washed through me so suddenly I had to sit down. 2 days later, Nathan came home early and told me she'd been terminated. Effective immediately. Security escorted her out of the building. Her access to all systems revoked. And then, nothing. No confrontation. No apology. No dramatic scene on our lawn. No final message explaining why she'd done any of it. Just silence. Which, oddly enough, turned out to be its own kind of torture. Because without answers, my brain filled in the blanks on its own. Why Nathan? Why us? How long had she been watching? Had he unknowingly encouraged her somehow? I hated that last question most of all, but it wouldn't leave. Nathan tried to move on quickly, like ripping off a bandage. She's gone. It's over. But it didn't feel over to me. It felt like someone had walked through our house rearranging things while we slept, and now even though the intruder was gone, nothing was quite where it used to be. I jumped every time the doorbell rang. I checked the driveway before pulling in. I started parking under bright lights at the grocery store. At night, I'd replay the camera footage in my head, the way she approached the porch like she belonged there. Nathan noticed, of course. You don't have to be scared, he said one evening. She's not coming back. You don't know that. She lost her job, Ruth. She's not going to risk legal trouble too. Maybe he was right. But fear isn't logical. It doesn't respond to statistics. A week later, I found the bracelet again while cleaning up the living room. I'd shoved it into a drawer and tried to forget about it. Seeing it now made my skin prickle. I almost threw it away. But something stopped me. Instead, I closed the drawer slowly and left it there, not because I wanted to keep it, but because I refused to let her decide how I felt about it. Nathan came up behind me and rested his hand on my shoulder. We're okay, he said softly. I leaned back into him, wanting to believe that more than anything. But deep down, I knew something had shifted between us, not broken, not beyond repair, but exposed. Like a crack you don't notice until water starts seeping through. And fixing the damage she caused was going to take a lot longer than firing her ever could. The strange thing about trauma, even small, suburban, non-violent trauma, is that life doesn't pause to let you process it. Bills still arrive. Trash still has to go out. The cats still scream for food at 6 in the morning like nothing happened. Meanwhile, your brain is stuck replaying one moment over and over like it's trying to solve a puzzle that no longer has pieces. For weeks after Brooke disappeared from our lives, I lived in a state of constant low-grade alert. Not panic, not hysteria, just a tight wire stretched through my chest that never relaxed. I started checking the porch camera before opening the front door. Then I started checking it before pulling into the driveway. Eventually, I caught myself checking it from the parking lot at the grocery store, just to reassure myself no one had been there while I was gone. Nathan noticed, of course. You don't have to do that, he said gently one night. I know. But knowing and stopping aren't the same thing. Sleep was worse. I'd wake up convinced I heard footsteps on the porch or a car idling outside. Sometimes I'd go stand at the window, heart pounding, only to see nothing but an empty street and the glow of a distant street lamp. After about a month of this, Nathan suggested counseling. Not because he thought I was broken, at least that's what he said, but because we went through something weird and it might help. Dr. Sandra Cole's office in South Portland was quiet in that intentional therapist way. Soft lighting, neutral colors, the faint smell of tea. The first session felt awkward and performative, like we were both trying to sound reasonable rather than honest. It wasn't until the third session that things cracked open. Dr. Cole asked a simple question. What changed in your marriage before this happened? Nathan and I looked at each other, both clearly hoping the other would answer. Finally, he said, nothing. And I said, at the exact same time, everything. We both stopped, surprised. I went first. Words poured out faster than I expected, how we'd stopped doing things together, how conversations had turned into logistics, how we were more like coworkers managing a household than partners sharing a life. Nathan listened, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the carpet. When I finished, he said quietly, I didn't realize you felt that way. That's kind of the problem, I replied. Dr. Cole nodded, but didn't interrupt. Then Nathan admitted something I don't think he'd ever said out loud before. At work, I feel important, he said slowly. People rely on me. They listen when I talk. I solve problems. At home, everything runs fine without me. That hurt more than I expected. Not because it was cruel, because it was honest. I stopped asking for things, I admitted. Because you were always tired or busy or traveling. Eventually, it felt easier to just handle everything myself. So you didn't need me, he said. I did. I just stopped saying it. Silence filled the room, heavy but not hostile. None of this excused what Brooke did. But it explained why her attention, the admiration, the intensity, might have felt appealing to him even if he never intended anything. And it explained why her intrusion shook me so deeply. She hadn't just targeted our marriage. She'd slipped into the empty spaces we'd created ourselves. Therapy didn't magically fix things. It was uncomfortable and slow and occasionally exhausting. But it forced us to start seeing each other again instead of just coexisting. Nathan began making small changes. Nothing dramatic, nothing movie-worthy. He stopped checking work emails during dinner. He started planning simple outings on weekends, walks along the coast, coffee in town, boring normal couple things we hadn't done in years. We also talked about the practical stuff. He changed jobs. Not because he had to, his company had been supportive, but because he didn't want to stay in the environment where all of it happened. He found a position with a smaller regional firm that required less travel and fewer late-night calls. We moved too. Not far, just to another neighborhood outside Portland. New house, new street, new routines. It felt less like running away and more like closing a chapter. The quiet revenge, if that's what you want to call it, didn't involve Brooke at all. It was choosing not to let her define the rest of our lives. About 6 months later, Nathan got a call from Trevor Miles, a former coworker who had left the company earlier that year. "Hey," Trevor said, voice awkward. "I don't know if you want to hear this, but there's been some fallout." Apparently, the internal investigation hadn't stopped at firing Brooke. The finance department uncovered a pattern of fraudulent expense reports going back over a year. Thousands of dollars in unauthorized purchases. Prepaid cards. False documentation. Legal action followed. "She's facing charges," Trevor said. "Not just company discipline. Actual charges." Nathan told me that evening while we were unpacking boxes in the new house. He expected me to react, anger, satisfaction, something. Instead, I just sat down on the floor and leaned against the wall. "Oh," I said. "That's it?" he asked gently. I don't know what else to say. The truth was, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I mostly felt tired, like I'd been holding tension in my body for months and suddenly didn't have to anymore. For the first time, it felt truly over. The last time Brooke crossed my mind in any emotional way happened a few weeks later. I was organizing jewelry and found the bracelet again, tucked in the back of a drawer. For a long moment, I just stared at it. I expected fear or anger or disgust. Instead, I felt nothing. It was just an object. Metal shaped into something pretty. Whatever meaning it once carried had faded. I almost threw it away. Then I stopped. Not because I wanted to keep a reminder of her, but because I realized she didn't get to control that choice either. Keeping it wasn't surrender. It was proof that it no longer had power. So I placed it in my jewelry box with everything else. Not hidden, not displayed. Just there. Our marriage isn't perfect now. I don't think any marriage is, no matter how polished it looks from the outside. But it's intentional in a way it wasn't before. We talk about things instead of letting them quietly calcify. We notice each other again. The fear faded gradually, almost without me noticing. One day I realized I hadn't checked the porch camera in weeks. Another day I opened the door without scanning the street first. Small milestones, but they felt huge. Nathan would prefer to forget the entire thing ever happened. To him, it's a bizarre episode we survived and moved past. I can't forget. Not completely. It feels like pretending a storm never hit just because the house didn't collapse. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Brooke had never fixated on us. Would we have drifted further apart? Would we have eventually broken in some quieter, less dramatic way? Or did her intrusion force us to confront problems we were already ignoring? That's the part one still don't know how to feel about. Because in a strange way, the person who tried to wedge herself into our marriage ended up forcing us to actually rebuild it. So I guess what I'm still struggling with is this. If something outside your relationship exposes cracks that were already there, and you repair them, is that a success story, or just proof those cracks were serious enough to break you eventually anyway?